are some post-revolutionary approaches to education. The first idea was that of the monitorial school. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about Sunday schools, private venture schools, academies, and school societies. These were all experimental type educational systems after the monitorial school were really schools using the monitorial method. The monitorial method was supposedly the brainchild of Joseph Lancaster from England. Or perhaps Joseph had picked that up while visiting the Ursuline Convent. He did visit the Ursuline Convent prior to releasing his ideas on this method. And there, the nuns used a unique system whereby there would be one nun and 4 or 5 class leaders who would show up before everyone else. The nun would teach the day's lesson or lessons to the 5 or 6 leaders, and then each leader would be responsible for a group of students who would come later in the day. So in essence, you have the teacher teaching the leaders who then turn around and teach the remainder of the class. What Lancaster proposed was something very similar to that, except he called those leaders monitors. If it quacks like a duck, if it looks like a duck. The monitorial school, the monitorial method, pioneered group instruction. Now, one teacher, that nun, could reach, let's say, 100 students with the aid of 10 leaders. Let's call those monitors. So, in this way, it expands the realm, it expands the number of students that one teacher could reach. This is just an expansion of the old recitation method where the teacher would teach X number of students, let's say 20, into, 20 times 20, if you will. Today, we still have that in a smaller form. We call it cooperative learning. Okay, kids, get into your groups. Pick your leader, and we're going to study this particular subject. The monitorial method was cheap, whereas the old recitation method back in the Latin grammar schools had one teacher and 16 to 20 some students. Now one teacher could be responsible for, let's say, 80 to 100 students. That's cheap. Americans love cheap, particularly when they're paying for it themselves. They want more bang for the buck. The monitorial method was effective with the basics. What do I mean by the basics? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. You could teach spelling this way easily, mathematics this way very easily. And then the true intellectuals come in and say, yes, but are you teaching them how to think? Is this real learning, or are you just teaching them to parrot back information? Now, my point is that you need to do a lot of parroting before you start thinking. You got to have stuff up there in your mind before you can start working with it. That's one of the ideas why this course is the way it is. I'm giving you a lot of factual information, and hopefully on down the road you will be able to use this information in your comps and in your dissertation itself. So hopefully on down the road you will do some real learning, but right now we're into the parrot phase. The monitorial method advanced the cause of universal education. People could see, people could understand now, wow, it's possible to educate larger numbers of people. It convinced many of the attainability and the worth of an education. And when it came time to vote, the monitorial method helped form attitudes favoring public support of education. Sunday schools were championed by a Gloucester publisher that's in Scotland named Robert Raikes. These were never really a substitute for other types of schools. This was simply something you did before church on Sunday. It was, if you want to call it that, an extension of the charity pauper school concept. Anybody could come. You simply had to be a Christian. You didn't have to be poor anymore. And you drop in to Sunday school, and perhaps we'll talk about something, and perhaps you can learn something about that. It removed the stigma of being poor. A fellow named Maddox wrote a book called The Free School Idea in Virginia before the Civil War, The Sunday School. In it, he said, the Sunday schools established a new relation between the rich and the poor. It was the only common school in which the sting of pauperism was not felt by the poor.